of doing up my conservatory. The new plaster is dry, so it's time to start decorating. So it feels like it's been quite a long journey to get to this stage. I had to take off the old wall covering over there, which was like a MDF wood panelling effect panels all the way along the outside wall, and then I had to board that out with plasterboard. This was the old brick wall, the old outside brick wall, so it was just bricks that had been painted, and it was really rough and uneven. So I've dotted down plasterboarded this side of the room and then plastered the whole thing. I've had to level the floor out because we're having new flooring coming in here. I've made a hole in what was the old back door, and I've cut a window out so I can get some extra light through into the kitchen, and I made a frame to go around that. I've been quite liberal with the polyfiller in my preparation as my amateur plasterer's best friend to fill in any holes and grooves, and here I had an odd edging here, so I had to do that by hand, not with the aluminium beading that I could use on the other external corners. So there's been a lot of work involved, and I always feel the painting is one of the last jobs to do, and it really, a coat of paint always makes such a huge difference on a room. But I'm going to start off with a mist coat on this new plaster, which is basically a water and paint mixture, and that acts as a primer on brand new plaster, and then any paint that you put on top of it allows the plaster to breathe. This plaster has had about a week to dry out, so I'm confident that that's really dry and ready to put the mist coat on. So this is all I'm using to make up my mist coat. I'm using matte emulsion and water. I don't use vinyl matte or vinyl silk or any of that kitchen or bathroom paint. It's got plasticizers in it. It's what gives it its waterproofing finish, and it acts more as a sealant rather than a primer on the plaster, and the plaster can't breathe, and you sometimes find that your top coat will bubble or it will just peel off. So just your basic matte emulsion, cheap and best, is fine. Just going to pour that in. There is another thing you can put on plaster called size, but it's for old plaster, and it's got glue in it as well as water. So it's emulsion, water and glue, like PVA or something. And I've used that before to put on old plaster if it's crumbly or dusty, and that acts as a sealant. This is a brand new plaster, it doesn't need any glue in it. I like to make sure all my tools and materials are nice and clean. This has got dust in it. I know this is only the undercoat, or the mist coat, but you just don't want to waste time having to pick out old bits of cobwebs and dead spiders and lumps of grit after you put it on the wall. So buckets, trays, rollers, just give them a wipe, just give them a dust before you start. Save you a lot of heartache in the future. Very neatly. I haven't put any dust sheets down because I'm changing the floor anyway, but it's always good to have a wet cloth handy. So I'm going to do my cutting in as I roll it at the same time. I'm not going to go around with the brush first at this stage. See, it's very wet. Let's go in there. Let's get this roller wet. Hello. Drops in. Yeah, you can see how wet it is. It's pouring down the wall. Let's mop up those big drips. patchy, still drying. It'll dry quite patchy, but that's fine. So this section here I'm going to do slightly differently paint-wise. I've done it differently plastering-wise as well. This is the archway where one extension met the other extension, and there was a step here from this plastered part up to the old bricks. So I couldn't plaster the whole thing because there was no end to the plaster. So all I did was stick a piece of plasterboard on top of the bricks, and then I've used polyfiller because it's much easier to sand. Well, you can sand it. Plaster you can't really sand, not big amounts. I've used polyfiller to fill in the gap and then sanded it flat, and I'm hoping that once I put some paint over it, they'll blend in well enough that you won't notice. The same happens here on this part here. So I'm using watered down kitchen paint for this one. It's got plasticizers in it because I want it to be a primer and a sealer, because I want to seal in this polyfiller now that I've sanded it, get rid of any of that dust. And I'm going to paint it on rather than putting it on with a roller, because I want to make sure I get as good a coverage as I can and use up what's in this jam jar. And then I'll second coat it with a roller. Well, it's a new dawn and a new day, so the sun is shining. Nice and patchy. So my aim is to get 2 coats of just bog standard white emulsion, matte emulsion on these walls today. One this morning and one this afternoon. Usually allow about 4 hours between coats depending on the conditions, but it's a nice sunny day, it'll dry quite quickly. One of the nice things about painting, especially these undercoats, is that it gives you a chance to get quite intimate with your walls. Now I've plastered these walls, and even just running a roller over them, it's clear to me that they're not perfectly flat. They are quite smooth, but they're not perfectly flat. And that's okay for me, it's my house. But I am, just before I start painting, I'm going to just run my hand over, and any rough spots I'm just going to use a piece of low grade sandpaper just to rub off any high spots, any rough areas before I start painting. Actually, I do myself a disservice. I'm running over these. I've just sanded these. I'm running over them just with a only just damp rag, just to get rid of the surface dust. And they're not too bad at all, actually. So for this undercoat, I actually am going to do the cutting in first. You can buy proper cutting in brushes, but I'm just using an ordinary one. Just work slowly. Because this plaster has only had one mist coat, it's still quite thirsty, so the paint will dry much faster as it soaks, still soaking into the plaster, and that's why I'm going to put 2 undercoats on before I go for my colour. I finished the cutting in. Just going to have a cup of tea while that dries for a minute. The plaster still feels a bit tender in places before I put the roller on it. In the meantime, I've just covered everything up with a bit of cling film to stop it drying, and moved his bed in here. He doesn't like the sofa being in the middle of the kitchen. Neither do I. Needs must. Needs must. Temporary. I really like to work the paint in with the roller, try and get rid of any lines. I'm really cross. I always spend money on paintbrushes and rollers. It it does make a difference in the terms of the quality. But I'm really cross. I keep finding little bits of fluff in here. I think this roller is shedding fluff, which is really annoying. But yeah, if you work it in, gives you a bit of work out. Good for your core. That's a fly. I barely touched the floor with that roller. It's picked up a load of grit. Not helpful. That's the first coat on. It's looking pretty good. What do you think, Monty? Side eye. I think this is the third, fourth pass that I'm doing on this archway now. I've put this polyfiller in and now I'm just sanding it nice and smooth. Get some sharper corners. I do think rubbing down is one of my least favourite jobs, decorating. It's hard work, dusty, makes a big mess, but it is worth it in the end. I'm into some colour now. I got the second coat of white on and then I left it alone for the weekend. Just to let it dry out. I've nearly finished the cutting in and then we'll get the rest of the colour on the walls. Exciting! This stuff I wouldn't use for years. Decorator's cork. I did everything with polyfiller. But I took the time to practice using it and now I love it. So good for filling in those little cracks and joins where other fillers just can't reach. The only downside is you can't sand it because it's got kind of a rubbery finish. You can paint over it, but you can't sand it. So you have to get it smooth as you apply it. And I find the best tool for that is my finger. So I'm ready to get some colour on the walls. This is the paint I'm using. It's just a Dulux, it's actually a Dulux bathroom paint. I'm using this for a couple of reasons. I really like the colour. It's like a grey green, sagey green. It's called Mossy Stone bathroom paint. And it's got a soft sheen finish, so it can wipe it much more easily than I could if it was in a matte emulsion. And it says it's good for, like it's a bit more moisture resistant. And this room changes temperature quite a lot. It can be really cold and quite damp in here, and then it can get boiling hot being conservatory. And I've used it all the way through in the kitchen, so it's good if there's steam, and it says resistant to mould, so we'll see. I didn't want to spend a huge amount of money. This tin was 22 quid, I think. It's 2.5 litres, and I'm hoping it'll be enough to do 2 coats in here. Let's see. too late in the day to put a second coat on today, and if this weather stays nice, I've got to go gardening tomorrow. So rather than washing out my tools, I'm going to wrap them up. Wrap them up in cling film, and then I'm going to put them in a bin bag. Keep them in a cool place. I'm going to stick mine in the shed, and they'll be good to go today or tomorrow without the faff of having to wash it all up. There. Now I better get the sofa out of the kitchen and call it a day. I'm on the final top coat now, and although I treat every coat, even that mist coat, as if it's the top coat, I'm making a real fuss over this one because it'll be the one that you touch, the one that you see, and you want it to be looking amazing. But if you start off with that theory that every coat is the top coat, you'll end up with such a lovely finish. You won't have any lumps in it, you won't have any lines in it, you won't have any bits of paintbrush in it or fluff off the roller. So yeah, it's worth taking the time. Oh, it looks so nice. I'm really pleased with it. Apart from the pneumatic drill that's going on outside, it's very calming in here. I've just spent the last couple of hours cleaning everything, cleaning the dust off everything, and it's lovely. I'm really pleased with it. Perfect preparation and all that. So I've just got to finish off the electrics, get that wired back up, and we're waiting for the flooring to arrive. That should be here in the next couple of weeks. And then we can start living in it, which will be nice. If you've enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments, and subscribe to my channel, Make It, Do It, Mend It, for all things DIY and home maintenance. Thank you very much for watching. See you again. Cheers. I baked you. No. No. He leans in for a cuddling. He leans in.